G20 presidency to be a low-key affair. And negotiations on deal to end the war in Ukraine is continuing. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The Sherpa of South Africa's G20 presidency and the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Zane Dango, says both South Africa and the United States want the handover of the G20 presidency to be a low-key affair. It will be probably done by a senior official from DECO to a U.S. diplomatic representative at the department's offices in Pretoria tomorrow. South Africa had made it clear on Saturday that the U.S. could not send its embassy charged the affairs, which is relatively a low-level appointee, to receive the presidency gavel from President Cyril Ramaphosa at the summit. Meanwhile, President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, has kicked off the EU-African Union Summit in Angola's capital today. The 7th EU-AU Summit is being held under the theme Promoting Peace and Prosperity Through Effective Multilateralism. The summit, marking 25 years of EU-AU partnership as well as 50 years of independence for Angola and several other African countries, will be co-chaired by the President of Angola, João Lourenço, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. Over the 2 days, leaders will participate in 2 thematic sessions to discuss how to strengthen cooperation in key areas of peace, security, governance, prosperity, people, migration, and mobility, amongst other things. Leaders are expected to issue a joint declaration at the end of the summit. South Africa's Johannesburg Metro police officers say drugs that they've confiscated in Houghton were destined for Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. The officers also arrested 8 suspects in a raid which they conducted at a hijacked property. They discovered large quantities of prescription cough syrups packed in boxes and processed dacha with an estimated street value of over $1 million. Johannesburg members of the Mayoral Committee of Public Safety, Ngcini Chwago, explains.
We came across this house here where they were housing a lot of medicine, like a cough medicine, cough syrup in here. This is the cough syrup with codeine, and it's you can't really just get this. Is actually a very, must not get it with the prescription, and then also you've got some Benylin with codeine that has been here, and also we've got dacha that was actually destined for Zimbabwe.
As South Africa observes the start of 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children tomorrow, civil society movements say there needs to be a clear plan for action, preventive measures and strategies amid gender-based violence and femicide being classified a national disaster. Government officially classified GBVF a national disaster last week following growing protests. Although some activists have questioned the timing of the announcement, others are happy about the declaration. The movement believes healthcare systems and facilities will need to be funded. Some activists believe a change of behavior is also.
So you cannot take it back. Now it's enough of we are a national crisis, we are speaking, now it's time for action.
The existing national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide that was drafted in 2019 needs to be revisited. So since the plan was drafted, we have surely seen an increased number of women and children being violated, murdered, abused, raped.
And lastly, negotiations on a deal to end the war in Ukraine are continuing after Washington and Kiev reported progress in talks yesterday. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there were just a couple of issues still to be resolved, though he and other key actors have now left Geneva. The Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna says there are some points Ukraine can't compromise on.
Russia will remain an aggressive country. And as well, if we are talking about the security guarantees, these security guarantees must follow the Article 5 principle as well. We cannot take down from the table the opportunity for the future membership of NATO for Ukraine. This is our regional and also European security. So there cannot be any kind of deals without Europe and Ukraine about us. It's very clear.
Recapping on your top stories, the Sherpa of South Africa's G20 presidency and the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Zane Dangos, says both South Africa and the United States want the handover of the G20 presidency to be a low-key affair. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, top South African football player set to move to the major soccer league out in the USA, while English football Rangers side sack their CEO. Details of these and other stories coming up at 4:30.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It is exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Thank you to Onele Nzinzi and Mosibudi Makura. It's been a bumper weekend in South Africa today, or rather this past weekend was a bumper weekend. And as far as the tourism impact is concerned, it was worth $58 million US. That is the visitor revenue from this past weekend's G20 events. We'll focus on that this afternoon. And Malawi once again calling on the International Monetary Fund to support it. There has been a gathering of various heads of tax administrators, and the focus once again being the international tax collaboration as joint initiatives are being put in place in order to ease compliance pressures on taxpayers and also to strengthen cross-border efforts to close the tax gaps. That and a whole lot more coming up for you this afternoon on Africa in Business. Do remember to continue engaging with us on the various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook, we are at Channel Africa.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect.
We begin here this afternoon with South Africa Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille. She says the Gauteng province has generated an estimated $58 million US in visitor revenue from this past weekend's G20 events. The figure marks the province's early tourism gains as South Africa concludes its G20 presidency. She says the strong turnout underscores Gauteng's growing appeal as a global meetings destination. Officials expect the final economic impact to be even higher once all sectors submit their reports. Channel Africa economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
More than 130 G20 meetings took place across South Africa, with the bulk of priority policy discussions hosted in Gauteng. The G20 adopted a declaration agreeing to address climate-related issues, strengthening disaster resilience and response, ensuring debt sustainability for low-income countries. According to Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille, tourism is part of the declaration.
Tourism is certainly part of the declaration. And again, all the G20 countries, we have committed ourselves to continue to work together, to innovate, to invest, to make sure that we improve air access, make travel seamlessly for our visitors, deal and with the reforms in our visa regulations. So we will continue to work together. With the G20 summit for South Africa, tourism must be the biggest winner. Our hotels are overflowing from Soweto to Sandton, all over, and we have already also during the year more than 135 working group meetings and ministerial meetings. So the tourism sector is very happy.
The big question is, what becomes of seasonal jobs, especially those in the hospitality industry?
We are also fortunately in the summer season that kicked off in September. So already a lot of those temporary jobs will stay at least until the end of the summer center. But that is why we have to do more to make sure that we absorb especially semi-skilled, unskilled young people, train them, keep them in the sector. Already just in the past 9 months, we've grown by more than 1 million tourists. And the more tourists come, the more jobs we can create.
De Lille said arrivals from the United States have now surpassed inbound tourists from the United Kingdom.
More people from the US are coming. They are now ahead of the United Kingdom that has led that market for many years. We've seen an increase in the number of flights between Washington, Newark, Cape Town and Johannesburg, and those flights are fully booked. In fact, they are looking for more frequencies. So as far as tourism is concerned, whatever happened in the geopolitical space had no impact in tourism. In fact, we've seen a positive spin-off.
Dr. Ntabiseng Muleko is an economist at the Stellenbosch Business School.
I think this is a pivotal moment. Firstly, this is the first G20 summit happening on the African continent. This is the first also for South Africa, hosting an economic international diplomacy engagement and cooperation of this nature. I think that significant is the investment flows, just direct tourism. I think besides the engagement in terms of the deliberations of the actual summit, but we've seen from the beginning of the year up until now, flights, hotel bookings, accommodation. The tourism sector is boosted and the value chain around that for catering, the use of our services, whether it's in the media space, people are active.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time as we turn our focus now to Malawi, where the President, Peter Mutharika, has called for urgent support from the International Monetary Fund to help Malawi confront what he described as an extremely difficult economic crisis. Mutharika says Malawi needs immediate resources to secure critical imports as the country faces a delayed farming season as well as recurring fuel queues. The country's finance minister, Joseph Mwanamweka, says they simply want the IMF program back. For more on this, we joined on the line by Dr. Bertha Bangara Chikadza, a macroeconomist, a lecturer in economics and deputy director of open and distance e-learning at the Malawi University of Science and Technology. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Thami.
So let's first of all perhaps start with a little bit of background. We've covered this quite extensively here on Africa in Business, but just a little bit of background as to how it is that Malawi finds itself in this situation with the IMF, where the IMF program has been retracted.
Thank you. But let me start by correcting that I'm now at the University of Malawi and not the Malawi University of Science and Technology. So tell me, we are in a country where, the problems are recurrent. We don't export more. We are an agricultural economy and we rely heavily on tobacco, which actually contributes about 23-24% of total foreign exchange earnings. And every time we have a problem, for example, with rainfall and anything, then production also slows down, and even foreign exchange generation also slows down. So we are not manufacturing enough, we're not exporting enough, and we are importing heavily because we are importing 3 times as much as we're exporting. And this has actually brought the problem of foreign exchange constraints in such a way that the country is experiencing queues in terms of petrol queues, fuel queues, but also we have a problem with food because last year we did not harvest enough, and so we are also food insecure. So actually we are in this problem which is structural. It's not temporary. It has been there. It's been in existence for a long time, and it does not require a one-size-fits-all thing. It requires a mix of emergency relief and medium-term reforms for us to stabilize the macroeconomy, because currently we're experiencing high inflation, and also with food shortages, we're also seeing food prices going up. And yes, I think for the government to say what they need is an IMF program, I think it's also something that I can agree with, especially now.
And the president having described the situation in Malawi as extremely difficult. You mentioned earlier on that, this is a structural weakness. Could you highlight for us which structural weaknesses in Malawi's economy have contributed most to the current crisis?
All right. I think, like I said initially, this is an agricultural based economy. But because we are an agricultural based economy, even our farming methods are old, they're obsolete. We are using hose, we are not irrigating, we are not, doing anything that is extra or out of the ordinary. So we are leaving agriculture to the smallholder farmer to feed the nation, which is over 20 million people. And also, it's the same farmers which are actually exporting to generate the much needed forex for us to use on all the imports. We are importing fertilizer, fuel, and each and everything, medicine, and so on and so forth. And like I said, what we're exporting and what we're importing are totally different because we have a negative trade balance that has been running from time immemorial. And right now we are talking about 3 times more. And when we're saying structure, because looking at the structure of the economy, the problems in there need also a structure change. We need to change even the way we export because we just export tobacco. We need to diversify exports. Currently, we're talking about mining because we know that if maybe we dive deep into mining, we might be generating more forex other than what we are getting from tobacco because commodity prices are always volatile, and anything that happens to tobacco, we don't control the prices. So at least in mining, if we diversify to mining, we diversify to other products, for example, maybe tourism, and also commercialize agriculture, then we should be able to produce more. We should be able to even cut on the, for example, inflation that the country is facing, because we might even have enough food, we might even have some things to export because we have commercialized agriculture. Now, agriculture should be seen as a business and not just something that produces food for domestic economy. So when we're talking about a structure, this is the problem because we don't have a lot of manufacturing. We don't have a lot of value chains in the country. It's just the agriculture, the tobacco, and maybe a few processing of soya beans, groundnuts, and so on and so forth. But we are not actually exporting enough to cover all our exports. So that's why we have this critical import backlog in terms of fuel, in terms of medicines, in terms of fertilizer. We are also having a currency that is not stable because as long as there is no balance in terms of demand for forex and what we are earning, the kwacha also tend to destabilize, and we have to actually keep on, trying to maintain the value of the kwacha. So there is actually a problem because even our import cover is not even up to the minimum 3 months import cover.
So
We're talking of less than a month.
So let's look at some of the options here as far as the IMF support is concerned. What type of support would be most appropriate for Malawi at this stage? Are we looking at the emergency financing? Is it an extended credit facility or perhaps another instrument?
I think for Malawi right now, we need something like a rapid disbursement of foreign exchange. So it can be maybe front-loaded disbursements under ECF, not the ECF that we had like 2 years ago, because at that time we are getting small and small amounts of money, of forex. And with the devaluation, it didn't help anything. We need a front-loaded disbursement that can control this problem, that can clear the critical import backlogs. We need a rapid credit facility that is really rapid, that can actually bring that stability in the foreign exchange reserves, but also stabilize the kwacha to avoid further depreciation and also pass through to inflation. So we need to strengthen the foreign reserves buffers because right now we have actually less than a month of import cover. So these are some of the stabilizers I think that we need. If the IMF is coming in, it needs to know that it's not just that, for example, 30,000, maybe $30 million that we need. We need enough money that can stabilize the currency, but also beef up our foreign exchange reserves.
And how do global factors such as the rising food cost, fuel prices, or even the tightening financial conditions exacerbate the crisis in Malawi?
These are also exacerbating the crisis in Malawi because, as you can see currently with the global financial crisis, the tightening of liquidity out there, the country cannot borrow, cheaply. With the way the country is, I think we need, that DSF that can actually talk to those who can lend us money that I think we are credit worthy. And when we look at also the issue of fuel pricing going up, fertilizer prices going up, and so on, a country that is highly indebted, that has also a high external debt, it means we are paying more even to service those debt, and we are leaving enough just to purchase whatever we are importing. And so when we import, they're also coming at a higher price, and that is also fueling the inflation in the domestic market, because we are filtering in the imported inflation into the domestic market.
Dr.
So
Bertha,
yeah, it's bringing actually a lot of problems.
we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. We thank you so much for your insight as we break down the economic state of Malawi, as well as the possible intervention of the International Monetary Fund, and what type of intervention would be needed in order to be sustainable for Malawi. We thank you, Dr. Bertha Bangara Chikadza.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. She takes us to exactly 22 minutes after 4 p.m.
madapiri pazochitika madapiri pazochitika
inogeka zingeni chihana alumbiritsidwa kukhala wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dziko la Malawi pa mwambo omwe unachitika ku nyumba yachifumu ya Sanjika mu mzinda wa Blantyre. Ndiye pano tili ndi olemekezeka a chihana. Takulandirani olemekezeka pano pa wireless ya Channel Africa pa Chinyanja Service. Amalawi ayembekezere zotani kuchokera kwa inu ngati wachiwiri winanso kwa president wa dzikolo?
Choyamba ngati vice president umagwira ntchito yopatsidwa ndi president imene yakuganizira. Ndiye malowozi athu atipatsa bwinobwino, koma ntchito yathu yayikulu ndi kuwathandiza president kuti masomphenya awo akwaniritsidwe. Pali zambiri zoti zichitike, nkhani ya njala mdziko muno, boma la udakali chimanga ndi china chomwe chili mdziko muno kuti tithandize ana families are affected. Chachiwiri kunali ma fuel shortages amene akanaliponso apo ndi apo, tionetsetse kuti pumps athu asakhale dry.
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. Gratitude begins with a story. Find yours on Channel Africa. Now streaming on our new website and mobile app.
It is exactly 23 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. At 4:30, we'll take you to the markets desk for the latest market indicators and then a look at the business of sport.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
Now, the Globelix conference is currently underway in South Africa's capital of Pretoria. The event has gathered experts from the Global South to discuss key issues like regulating artificial intelligence on the continent, shaping innovation policy for inclusive development, and the future of green industrial development, as well as critical minerals. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Gechi Karuri Sebina, Globelix 2025 Scientific Committee member and Director of Tayarisha Center for Digital Governments at the Wits School of Governance. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Welcome to Africa in Business. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the audience.
So if you could please give us an idea of what the conference is about and the significance of this global event, and also why it's significant that it's been held in South Africa and the timing thereof, just after the G20 Leaders Summit.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Thami. And so Globelix is a really significant convening. So we're talking about over 250 people from 50 countries who are all studying and discussing the economics of learning, innovation, and competence building. That's what Globelix stands for. And it's been going for 13 years, since around 2002, and it's really quite significant that for the second time it's being held in South Africa, right around, as you said, the post-G20 kind of energy. And our conversations are very much about how we amplify the Global South's voice to this, during this period of our G20 presidency around issues of innovation, around issues of economic development, really trying to drive policy influence. The theme of the conference this year is innovation for sustainable and inclusive development, for resilience and to meet global challenges. And being in Africa, being in the global south, obviously these are the issues front of mind as we look at what G20 achieves at this time. It's possibly also relevant to mention that it's also happening alongside the Science Forum South Africa, which is actually happening across the road from where we are at the NRF. That's happening at the CSIR ICC. And that's another convening that's also about really trying to talk about how we use SDI policy to drive economic and social development in the global south.
Can you take us through some of the key topics of discussion, some of the plenaries that are going to be held and discussed over the next 3 days?
Yeah, so there's loads of, they pack a lot into 3 days, but maybe to just highlight some of the key ones, there's a major theme on innovation and inequality reduction. And being in Africa, one of the things we're foregrounding are the role of indigenous knowledge and the informal sector. Another key theme is climate change and sustainable innovation. So there's conversations happening around green innovation, what that means for enterprise development, what that means for policy strategies in the South. And maybe to highlight a third one that's close to my own work and heart is digital transformation and data infrastructures. So today there's been a very big focus on artificial intelligence. What do these digital innovations mean? How do they impact marginal communities? What do they mean for competition and growth? What do they mean even for the green transition? So these are some of the themes, but there's a long list of really exciting topics, all really related to the shape of development, if you want to call it that.
So how has the conference, you've mentioned that you've been around for quite a while. How has the conference, the deliberations, as well as the recommendations that have come out of it, influenced innovation as well as technology policies for the South, particularly for the African continent?
Absolutely. So, look, it's hard to say how they have so far. So let me talk about what the potential is in this space. I would say, looking at it historically, most African countries have innovation policies and are steering what we call national systems of innovation as a strategic choice. And a lot of that has, over time, been influenced very much by Globelex. But what our hope is right now is we think we are at a very important stage, I think, for the continent and for South Africa in particular, around, for example, transformative policy dialogue. So we know the term dialogue very much in South Africa. It's a global thing. And if you look at topics like AI and everybody's fears, but also hopes for it, we need dedicated policy dialogues, and convenings like this are a space for actually engaging that. Another really important one is the South-South collaboration. I've mentioned 50 countries are here. I've been speaking today to people from Brazil, Mexico, India, Thailand, and we're all trying very much to learn from each other about what we can do and possibly do differently from models that are currently failing, even in the North. And then maybe a last one that's very exciting, I think, from, about 30% of the people here are really young scholars, young academics from across the continent who are here presenting papers, connecting, learning. And that's really exciting because that space of networking, these are our future. And for them to be in these conversations, I think will be life-changing for them.
I wonder if any of your delegates actually attended any of the G20 settings or were involved in the build-up to it. Is that something that you can comment on?
Yeah, sure. So, I had a panel this morning that was a special panel that was on AI, for example. And I know many of us were the same group of thinkers and doers who were at the AI summit under G20. And so we would have been part of those conversations there and trying to influence thought. I believe also on the green economy side, a number of people here would have been part of those conversations. So I think there are strong connections. I think many idea people are sitting in the room here with us today who have tried to input as experts in various ways into the G20. I believe we've got policymakers coming in and out. We had the Director General from DSTI here, and I've seen other people coming in and out. So I hope we're pretty close, at least in terms of proximity to the G20. Whether we're close in terms of influence, time will tell.
What's important is the discussions are being held and the right ears are listening as well, especially when it comes to congruency of thought and way forward. Professor Getchi Karuri Sabina, we thank you so much for your time and wishing you all the best for the rest of the Globelex conference.
Thank you, Thami. Thanks, audience.
Thank you, Prof. That's Professor Getchi Karuri Sabina, Globelix 2025 Scientific Committee member. She's also the director of Kayarisha Center for Digital Governance at the Wits School of Governance. She takes us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time as we head over now to the markets, where Matapelo Mahapi is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. A look at your markets at this hour. $1 is trading at 17 rands at 36 cents in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 pula 30. In Namibia, it is trading at 17 Namibian dollars 36. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 22 kwacha 93 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 66. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 153 birr 92. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shillings 614, while in Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 435. $1 is trading at 1,000 Naira 415 Nigeria, and in Egypt the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pounds 42. In Tunisia it is trading at 2 dinar 94. In Algeria it is trading at 130 dinar 25, while in Morocco the dollar is trading at 9 dirham 28. In Angola the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,195 to the US dollar. A look at your commodities. Gold is trading at $4,084 and platinum at $1,535 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $62.63 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Matapelo Mahapi.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Thami. A very good afternoon once again from the sports desk. So Orlando Pirates, as well as Bafana young defender Mbegezeli Mbogazi, is reportedly set to sign for Major League Soccer outfit the Chicago Fire, as per report by legendary sportscaster Mark Gleason. Now, Pirates reportedly stand to pocket about $3 million should they agree on the transfer fee for the young captain. Now, Gleason further added that Mbogazi and his agent Basia Michaels arrived in the USA last Friday to look at concluding the deal ahead of the January transfer window. The 20-year-old, a tough tackling defender, has been a menace for both club as well as country since breaking into the Buccaneers senior team after earning promotion to the top flight football just last season. There are also 3 South African players in the MLS at present, Uponguhle Hlongwane being one of them. He currently plies his trade for the Minnesota United team, as well as the Philadelphia Union duo of Olwe Tumakanya, as well as the head coach Bradley Carnell. While Morocco's AS FAR reclaimed their place at the Summit of African Women's Club Football after clinching the CAF Women's Champions League title over the weekend, edging Ivorian side AS Mimosas by 2-1 in a fiercely contested final played at the Suez Canal Stadium in the city of Ismailia in Egypt. Now, for winning this competition, AS FAR walked away with $600,000. Now, CAF, by the way, increased the prize money by 52% from last year's event. Now, AS Mimosa, meanwhile, the runner-ups at this year's tournament, walked away with $400,000 after winning the silver medal. Further afield now, Rangers have sacked Chief Executive Officer Patrick Stewart as well as the Sporting Director Kevin Thewal from their post with immediate effect, with the Scottish Premiership club suggesting that they do not align with their vision for the next chapter. So both had been criticised, by the way, by supporters following a poor start to the season that led to Russell Martin's dismissal in October after just 17 games as the head coach coach. Now, former Manchester United chief executive Stewart only arrived at the club in December of last year, while Farewell's appointment was announced in April, although he did not take up the post until leaving Everton at the end of last season. Now, Rangers have since been the subject of a takeover from the US-based consortium led by Andrew Canavar, who has now been appointed the director, Fraser Thornton, as interim chief executive, while the replacement is found for the team. Back home now, South Africa's Premier Soccer League have acknowledged progress in the plans to introduce video assistant referee technology in South African football, but have also indicated that key information is still outstanding before the league can fully participate in the discussion. Now, the rollout now enters a technical phase, which will need the final quotations for hardware, software, as well as operational costs. The National Treasury have confirmed an initial allocation of more than $2 million to support the introduction of VAR in the current financial year. So Dr. Ivan Khoza, who is the PSL chairperson, has welcomed the good move by the ministry who have of course placed more than $2 million to ensure they fund the rollout of VAR.
Because the minister gave us good news, on the 30th of September 2024, but also good news reading from the newspapers on the 4th of September 2025. So we are welcoming the announcement, but also it's very important to do it in a manner that's going to assist to comply with our obligations as the PSL. Because it's very important for the aesthetics integrity of our fixtures. We've done very well so far as the PSL in making sure we represent the country the best we can with the legal resources we have.
And finally, Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups is due to arrive in court later on today to enter a plea in a sweeping criminal case accusing the NBA Hall of Famer of conspiring with the mafia to rig illicit poker games. Now, the arrangement is set to take place during a hearing for all the 31 defendants in the case. Prosecutors say they orchestrated an elaborate scheme using pro athletes' star power to lure victims to card games, then cheat them using high-tech equipment. He is charged with fraud as well as a money laundering conspiracy. He has also denied wrongdoing through his lawyers. Now, the alleged scheme dates back to 2019 and defrauded victims of at least $7 million according to prosecutors, who say members of the conspiracy used violence as well as extortion to collect on debts incurred by the victims. Billups, 49 years of age, is in his fifth year as Portland's head coach, but is currently suspended from that position. He played for 7 teams during his NBA career and also won a championship with the Detroit Pistons back in 2004. Well, that is a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us as well on +27 11714 4459. There'll be more sporting updates tomorrow morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:39. Thank you to Matapelo Mahapi and Musibudi Makura. The Angolan President João Lourenço and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen open the EU-African Union Summit in Angola. This marks 25 years of EU-AU partnerships. The summit comes as Angola holds the rotating African Union presidency. The leaders of 27 EU countries and 55 African Union countries are expected to focus on a number of issues, including strengthening cooperation in key areas such as peace and security, economic integration, trade, multilateralism, green development, digitization, migration, mobility, as well as human development. We'll keep you updated right here on Channel Africa as those EU-African Union Summit deliberations continue. We take you now to the 18th plenary of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Forum on Tax Administration. Now, it heard that international tax collaboration is more critical than ever before, and this is largely due to the current geopolitical landscape. During the plenary, heads of tax administrations made a commitment to advance joint initiatives aimed at easing compliance pressures on taxpayers, as well as strengthening cross-border efforts to close the tax gap. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Jermaine Manicus, the CEO of Latita Africa. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on African Business. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Thami, and good afternoon to your viewers.
So what are the global tax administration trends that were highlighted at the OECD Forum on Tax Administrations? What are they, those ones that are most relevant for South Africa's current tax landscape?
I think the takeaway from what we've experienced from the OECD Forum that was hosted in Cape Town is that everything from administration is going to become more digital, real-time, and connected across the globe. Everything is moving to big data. So I think with everything that shifted with AI in particular, we're seeing that global players like the tax commissioner and the likes on the global scale is all looking at using AI as a tool to ensure that we are more compliant as a nation.
And how does this impact the rest of the continent? I mean, you mentioned interconnectedness across the globe. How does it bode for interconnectedness throughout the African continent?
I think the idea is that from a standpoint, they want us to be able to do everything in a more real-time fashion, opposed to doing everything from a historical point of view. So when we start doing transactions on the African continent, intertrading, where before they would require historic paperwork to classify when transactions were done, the idea behind this is that everything becomes more real-time. So when I'm doing a transaction between here and Mozambique authorities are already informed of that transaction, not waiting for you to let them know when that has happened.
And how do we stand as far as infrastructure development is concerned? Is the technology at an advanced enough stage and accessible enough to all of the various stakeholders for this to become a possibility in the present?
I think in truth, South Africa is one of the more advanced on the international spectrum, with our in the likes of our e-filing systems and those type of things already being at a very advanced stage compared to all our competitors or our partners out there. So I think the biggest challenges that we would need to be considerate of is our legacy systems. That is still very much a concern. It's the amount of people that we still require that have a certain skill set to enable us to get through certain processes. And obviously just the ensuring that the information that is being gathered is not just spat out from a point of AI, but also being analyzed from a point of what is real.
Let's focus a bit on the challenges that South Africa might be facing in integrating advanced digital tools into its compliance systems.
So again, I think we as South Africa has been very advanced in how we've approached things. I reiterate the legacy systems of what we needed to consider changing, the likes of how we integrate between us and the rest of the world with the OECD, trying to put together systems that allows all that level of integration. Now, South Africa being on the benchmark of some of this advanced technology, I think we're still ahead of the pace. So we are to still allow the rest of the world to catch up, I guess.
Now, how is the global expectation of enhanced tax transparency? I'm talking about the likes of automatic exchange of information and beneficial ownership disclosure. How is all of that affecting tax planning, specifically for South African multinationals?
I think what's important from that perspective is that when South Africa came off the grey listing, it was part of the requirement that we would obviously ensure that beneficial ownership became clearer. So when multinationals came through, they would structure things very, very in a way that makes it tax savvy. But it's becoming increasingly difficult if that structure is not intended for proper purpose, which means is if corporate companies out there is not structuring it, if corporate companies out there is purely trying to structure things for the aid of avoiding tax, they face a challenging, daunting task, because all this data is now going to be available with immediate effect to the authorities, which is going to make it more and more challenging to get through certain processes.
You've highlighted the level of advancement of South Africa as far as a number of the instruments are concerned, but I wonder where the gaps are as far as South Africa's tax administration relative to OECD standards.
I think, again, from that perspective, we've looked at the beneficial ownership of transparency. There's a new asset class of scope, which looks at pulling in things like your cryptocurrency as part of those assets. So when we look at the global trends and where we need to be, I think it will be a full rollout of evolution at global minimum tax systems moving towards real-time and event-based models, AI-driven compliance, deeper integrated tax, anti-money laundering and ESG agendas, pressures on domestic resource mobilization in low growth and high debt worlds. So at first, the global minimum tax will see evolution. South Africa has ready for as effective as incentives of investment story of our revenue. So what that means is transparency is going to be key.
Right. So what are the global trends that are currently emerging that South African policymakers ought to be anticipating in the coming years?
I think further enhancement of transparency, I think that's going to be key. How you structure it is going to be important. Ensuring that you're not trying to evade money from the tax authorities, because the whole aim behind this agenda was to see how better they would be suited to be able to collect on that revenue that was due to them. So from that perspective, I think it's going to be important that from a future perspective, that we align with those trends, not only within South Africa, but within the global strand.
Jermaine Manikas, thank you so much for your insight this afternoon. Very much appreciated, sir.
Thank you very much, Thami.
Thank you. That's Jermaine Manikas. He's the CEO of Latita Africa. He takes us to exactly 4:48 Central African time. Still coming up for you this afternoon. In a moment, we'll just go into some Eskom wage issues, and our F&B slot this afternoon will be taking a look at the week that was, South Africa's economic growth, and also the week ahead with producer inflation, numbers to be released later on this week. And also the private sector credit extension data could be showing some interesting trends of South African businesses. All that coming up soon.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
Now, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, says workers should be compensated adequately for helping keep the lights on at the power utility Eskom. This comes as wage talks are expected to resume on Tuesday, the 25th of November. This is after the unions and Eskom concluded the first meeting last week over the structure of the bargaining process. Eskom faces a 15% wage increase demand from the unions. Notando Makudulela reports.
As wage negotiations get underway, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, calls on workers to be compensated for services rendered at the power utility Eskom. This is unions representing workers at Eskom call for a 15% wage hike. In 2023, a collective agreement was reached with trade unions and Eskom for a period of 3 years. This agreement will come to an end in June 2026. The agreement included a 7% salary increase and 7% increase in the housing allowance per year over the 3-year period.
It is our view that workers have earned whatever increases and demands that they've placed on the table. If you look at Eskom's overall performance, they have finally made a profit margin of over 16 billion. That kind of turnover, that kind of performance, the fact that Eskom, as we speak right now, has gone over 600 days without load shedding, that it has an energy availability factor of over 90%. All of that can be attributed to the hard work of workers who are negotiating right now in this forum with the employer. And I think it's important that viewers understand that the lights are on because of the sweat and labor of workers at Eskom.
In its financial report, Eskom says its group headcount increased by 1,405 to 42,030 from 40,625 employees in 2025. The power utility says 81% of its workforce is part of a bargaining unit. Eskom says its remuneration includes a basic salary, a 13th check, and a comprehensive suite of benefits such as pension and medical aid, among others, subject to qualifying criteria. Notando Makudulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
It is exactly 4:51 Central African Time. In just a few moments, we hand over to Vue d'Afrique. We say bonjour to you, Joël.
Bonjour à toi, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa Vue d'Afrique. C'est dans quelques petites minutes. Il sera question des dépouillements en cours en Guinée-Bissau après la présidentielle de dimanche. Et nous parlerons du Nigeria. 50 élèves s'échappent après un enlèvement de masse dans une école catholique. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connectés pour suivre également le sport avec Jolie Nosungu à la deuxième partie de l'édition. Il sera question du football et de la Ligue des champions de la CAF. Sundowns vs FC Saint-Éloi Lupopo. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci Thami.
Merci beaucoup. That's Vue d'Afrique coming up at the top of the hour.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
In this week's slot with First National Bank, we'll look at South Africa's economic growth, producer inflation that is set to be released this week, and if there will be another acceleration. We'll also look at the private sector credit extension data and what it means for South African businesses. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Thanda Stole, FNB senior economist. Thanda, good to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon to your viewers.
So what's your take on the week that was? Do you think it could perhaps translate into more investment in South Africa, economic growth? The G20 buzz has not quite subsided as yet.
Sure, definitely. I think it was an exceptionally positive week for the B20 and the G20. But I think generally, if you look at South Africa, there has been a lot of positive developments which should actually trigger some positive financial market response, starting from the removal of South Africa from the grey list, moving to a medium-term budget that was positively received by financial markets, the upgrade of South Africa by S&P, one-notch upgrade, and the general endorsement of the new lower inflation target by the finance minister. I think all those positive developments, taking into account the ongoing reforms as well under Operation Vulindlela 2.0, I think all those things are quite positive and should actually over time lead to a concrete investment spending. But as far as the B20 is concerned, I think was quite positive. It was an exceptionally positive week from that perspective. If you look at what the B20 did and the G20 did, there was this general high-level alignment between governments and business community. So I think that is quite critical around issues of inclusive economic growth, around issues of accelerating investment towards emerging market, and around issues of tackling issues of inequality globally. So I think all those things should actually result into positive investment over time. But also, I think what was also more critical from a B20 perspective is that the matters that were raised are more in line with the matters that currently government is raising in South Africa, issues of infrastructure investment, both physical and digital, but also support for SMEs as well as women and youth-led businesses. So all those issues, if they are appropriately tackled, should actually unlock a business confidence and investment into the economy. I think it all depends now on how we transition from these high levels declarations to actually more reforms and implementable projects. If that could materialize, I think we'll definitely see investment pick up and growth pick up as well over time.
And I dare say, Tanda, that is where the crux lies in the implementation. So let's take a look at the week ahead. The producer inflation will be released this week. Could we perhaps be seeing another acceleration?
It's possible. I was looking at Bloomberg consensus. They're seeing a marginal uplift from around 2% to around 3%. It's possible as base effects from fuel seem to have petered out. So it could actually lift marginally. But you can see it around those levels. It remains relatively contained.
And also the private sector credit extension data could be showing some interesting trends of South African businesses.
Definitely. So the dynamics there are quite interesting. So if you look at total private sector credit extension, it's been growing decently by around 6% in the previous month. So October could be slightly higher than that, but it's slightly been driven by corporates. So if you look at corporate credit, it's been the driver of total credit extension. So I think that trend will continue, supported by your general loans and advances, things like your vehicle asset finance, and to some extent mortgage finance. But if you look at the household side, credit extension has been subdued from that perspective. If you look at the likes of mortgage advances, unsecured credit, which is mainly your general loans and advances, from that sphere of the consumer, it has been actually contained. The only that seems to be growing quite decently is your vehicle asset finance on the household side as well. And that is not surprising, because if you look at new vehicle sales, those have been growing quite decently on a year-to-date basis, up by about 22% or so. So that trend has actually assisted in terms of supporting vehicle asset finance. I think that what we've seen is that the interest rate cuts that have materialized so far, together with your demand for entry-level vehicles, particularly those that are coming from the east, that has actually driven demand for vehicles and also demand for vehicle asset finance from a household perspective. So we expect that the trend will remain mixed, largely driven by corporate credit, but some lines of credit are actually going to outperform others.
And also coming up this week, we'll be finding out more about our trade balance.
Definitely. The trade balance print for September was impressive, at about just over 20 billion, coming from 4 billion a month before. That trend could actually be sustained in the month of October. It seems like consensus is quite positive that it could actually be closer to 25 billion. If that materializes, it will be positive for the current account balance. But I think that it's largely been driven by the price effect as opposed to volumes. So the commodity prices have been supportive. Whereas if you look at oil prices, those have been subdued. So it's likely a price story as opposed to volume story. We hope that volumes are also going to respond positively going forward, as we see some stabilization in ports and rail, but also maybe over time global demand is going to start to pick up, particularly from our major trading partners, which will ultimately support export volumes. But at this stage, it's likely a price effect story, and the fact that domestic demand still remains subdued. So domestic imports are also very subdued at the moment.
Tanda Sithole, always a pleasure. Thank you for a really comprehensive look at the week ahead. You have yourself a splendid one, Father.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's Tanda Sithole, FNB senior economist. He brings us to exactly 4:59 Central African time. And that's how we bid you farewell on this Monday afternoon from myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire Africa in Business team. It's a very good day to you as we hand over to Vue d'Afrique. Restez connectés.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa.